Here, the Deputy Prime Minister says he's delighted that the Lib Dems have persuaded the government to bring in rules forcing businesses to publish how much they pay men and women doing the same job. Well, let's talk about this now with Harini Iyengar, who's a barrister specialising in discrimination and employment law. She joins us now from central London. Very good afternoon to you. What difference do you think this change in the law would make?
Good afternoon. To my mind, it's a very significant development. We've had the equal pay rules on the statute book since 1970, and it's also no surprise to businesses and workers that we've got a pay gap problem in the country. The improvement in the gap between men and women's pay has been really slow, you might say glacial. And we've also had this provision, Section 78 of the Equality Act 2010, on the statute books for 5 years, but no one has brought it into force. In the autumn, we saw a campaign by Sarah Champion and Grazia magazine, and then we were under the impression that it was going to go idle because of the election. So it's quite a surprise to hear it's going to be brought into force. I think there'll be two major impacts. First of all, it makes a shift from it being a problem for individual women to sue their own employer off their own bat, get hold of the evidence by hook or by crook, lots of skirmishes about disclosure. And it changes it into a regulatory issue for businesses. So I think that's going to herald a huge cultural shift from a sort of sideline feminist issue to a mainstream risk issue for businesses, a regulatory risk issue. And the second change, speaking as someone who's litigated a lot of equal pay claims representing employers as well as employees, I think it's going to change the tactics. It's always been difficult to know as an employer how much you should disclose about colleagues' pay to individual women, how much is going to be relevant, what about the confidentiality of the colleagues. And similarly, if you're a litigant, what should you be asking for? Are you going to get it? When are you going to get it? And how does that affect how you bring your claim? I think there's going to be a huge shift now because the principle will be that bigger businesses should be transparent about pay.
And give us an idea of just how wide the pay gap is at the moment. How big a problem do we have? Because the government says it's at its lowest level ever. They maintain it's been virtually eliminated for those people working full-time under the age of 40s. What's your take?
Well, there are statistics and statistics here. If you look at just full-time pay without including overtime, it's now at the lowest level. It's true, it's about 9.4%. But in this country, we have a lot of segregation between men and women in the labour market, and we have horizontal segregation, which is certain occupations like childcare, say, or teaching, very female dominated, occupations like heavy industry or banking, very male dominated. And then we also have vertical stratification, which means you look at a profession like teaching, a lot of women in the junior positions, very few women at the top, and that same vertical stratification you see in professions like the law. If you look at what the ONS, Office for National Statistics, calls the higher skills and trades, more skilled profession, the pay gap is now 25%. And when you look at the financial services sector, it's as high as 55%. Well, there's also a difference between the public sector and the private sector. The public sector pay gap now is, I believe, around 11%, and the average private sector pay gap is around 17%.
Okay. Well, Harini Iyengar, really interesting to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.